Interstate 75 is a part of the Interstate Highway System and runs from the Hialeah-Miami Lakes border, a few miles northwest of Miami, to Sault Ste. Marie in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I-75 begins its national northward journey near Miami, running along the western parts of the Miami metropolitan area before traveling westward across Alligator Alley, resuming its northward direction in Naples, running along Florida's Gulf Coast, passing the cities of Fort Myers, Punta Gorda, Venice, Sarasota, and the Tampa Bay Area, before turning inward towards Ocala, Gainesville, and Lake City before leaving the state and entering Georgia. I-75 runs for 471 miles in Florida, making it the longest interstate in any state east of the Mississippi River. The interstate maintains a speed limit of 70 miles per hour for its entire length in Florida. The portion of I-75 from Tampa northward was a part of the original 1955 Interstate Highway plans, with I-75's southern terminus at I-4's current western terminus. Planning to extend the interstate south to Miami began in 1968 after massive growth in southwest Florida, which resulted in I-75 being realigned to travel on the eastern fringes of the Tampa Bay Area, and the last portion of the highway was opened in 1993. For FDOT inventory purposes, it is designated as State Road 93 for most of its length in Florida. Route description South Florida I-75 begins its northward journey at an interchange with SR 826 and SR 924 on the Hialeah-Miami Lakes border, near Miami. As it curves around the border of Miami Lakes, I-75 serves some of the western fringes of South Florida as an 8-lane highway. After an exit with SR 860, I-75 has a southbound interchange with the Homestead extension of Florida's Turnpike before crossing into Broward County. There, it continues through the western suburbs of Pembroke Pines, Western, Miramar, Davie, and Southwest Ranches. At the junction of SR 869 and I-595, I-75 enters a west-to-east trajectory as it crosses the Everglades by way of Alligator Alley, a toll road which runs from the Collier Boulevard Toll Plaza to the US 27 Toll Plaza. It was originally constructed as a 2-lane highway before it was converted to a 4-lane highway meeting interstate highway standards. At this point, I-75 loses a lane in each direction, heading west, losing another lane west of the US Route 27 interchange. The Everglades and Southwest Florida the Alligator Alley section west of Fort Lauderdale, Florida and east of Naples is due west-to-east and is one of only 2 sections of I-75 that are tolled. There are only 2 interchanges along the 75-mile tolled portion of Alligator Alley in addition to 2 rest areas and a number of scenic outlook points as it crosses the Florida Everglades. I-75 enters Collier County along Alligator Alley just west of the Snake Road exit and passes through the Big Cypress National Preserve between the Collier County border and State Road 29. There are a number of small bridges along Alligator Alley to allow wildlife to pass under the freeway, especially along the Florida Panther National Wildlife Refuge east of SR 29. Extensive fencing also prevents wildlife from crossing traffic. Once near Naples at County Road 951, I-75 makes a sharp turn north, resuming its south-north trajectory and gains a 3rd lane each way as it parallels Florida's west coast. As it continues north, I-75 passes near Bonita Springs, Fort Myers, Punta Gorda, Port Charlotte, Venice, Sarasota, and Bradenton, before reaching the Tampa Bay Area metropolis consisting of Tampa and St. Petersburg. Tampa Bay Area North of Allenton, I-275 splits from I-75 to serve St. Petersburg and Pinellas County via the Sunshine Skyway Bridge and Tampa via the Howard Franklin Bridge. I-75 parallels the eastern shore of Tampa Bay as a bypass route of the Tampa Bay Area, as it passes by the communities of Brandon, Temple Terrace, and New Tampa. 2 expressways access downtown Tampa from I-75, the Leroy Selman Expressway and I-4. Within the Tampa Bay metropolitan area, many interchanges are far more complex than mere Diamond, Cloverleaf, or even SPUI interchanges. Aside from the large turbine interchange with I-4, there are interchanges with Fowler Avenue and Fletcher Avenue Morris Bridge Road that contain both loops and flyovers. A flyover ramp was built from southbound Bruce B. Downs Boulevard to southbound I-75. Northern Florida equals. At the Hillsborough-Pasco County line, I-275 rejoins I-75 and I-75 changes into a southwest-northeast trajectory as it passes through Pasco, Hernando, and Sumter counties where it runs through parts of the Withlacoochee State Forest on its way to the junction with Florida's Turnpike. Widened median segments exist in northern Pasco County, Hernando County, and in Sumter County north of County Road 476B. Some of these median segments are actually considered part of the Withlacoochee State Forest itself. The Withlacoochee State Trail runs beneath I-75 between US 98 past Stadium 50 and the Hernando-Sumter County line, where it also crosses over the Withlacoochee River. All of Interstate 75 from the Georgia border to Tampa, Florida is 3 lanes, unless closed for construction. This is to accommodate for the immense amount of tourists and vacationers that come to Florida. After Florida's Turnpike, 175 changes into a general southeast-northwest trajectory, which is sustained to the Georgia state line and beyond. I-75 passes beneath the Cross Florida Greenway, which contains a land bridge built across the highway in 2001 between exits 341 and 350, before entering the city of Ocala, and passing by the cities of Gainesville and Lake City and crosses I-10 at an interchange before entering the state of Georgia, near Valdosta. I-75 runs closest to US 41 except between Tampa and High Springs. It runs closer to US 301 between Allenton and Temple Terrace, and again from Dade City to Spa. From Bellevue to Lake City it runs closest to US 441. Lane configurations from southern terminus to I-595, 4 lanes each way, between I-595 to US 27, 3 lanes each way, between US 27 and Golden Gate Parkway, 2 lanes each way, between Golden Gate Parkway and the Lee-Charlotte County line, 3 lanes each way, between the Lee-Charlotte County line and River Road, 2 lanes each way, but gradually being widened to 3 lanes each way, between River Road and SR 582 3 lanes each way except through Riverview and part of Brandon where it is. Up to 5 lanes each way, between SR 582 and Florida's Turnpike, 2 lanes each way, but gradually being widened to 3 lanes each way, between Florida's Turnpike and Georgia State Line 3 lanes each way. History Original route to Tampa Originally, I-75 was planned to be built to Tampa, where it would terminate at I-4. Construction of the original route from the Georgia border to Tampa via Gainesville and Ocala lasted through most of the 1960s and was completed by 1969. At this point, I-4 continued west along what is now I-275 over the Howard Franklin Bridge into St. Petersburg. Extension to Miami due to major growth in southwest Florida, Florida's state government proposed to build a West Coast Turnpike in the mid-1960s from the Tampa Bay area south to Naples, where it would connect with Alligator Alley. Plans for the West Coast Turnpike were cancelled in 1968, when it was announced that the federal government would pay 90% towards extending I-75 to Naples and the Miami area. In preparation for the extension, I-75's designation was extended along the pre-existing route of I-4 over the Howard Franklin Bridge into St. Petersburg by the end of 1969. From St. Petersburg, I-75 was to continue south over the Sunshine Skyway Bridge and on to Naples closely following the West Coast Turnpike's planned route. From Naples, I-75 was planned to run along the Tamiami Trail across the Everglades to just east of the Palmetto Expressway where it will continue along the Dolphin Expressway and terminate at I-95 in downtown Miami. Once the Miami extension was planned in 1968, construction began on a bypass route east around Tampa Bay. The bypass was initially planned to be designated I-75E, and was to split from I-75 near Wesley Chapel. However, in 1972, it was determined that maintaining the main route of I-75 through downtown Tampa would eventually require major improvements to the existing infrastructure to handle through traffic. As a result, it was decided that I-75 would instead bypass downtown using the I-75E route, with the original route through downtown Tampa and St. Petersburg becoming I-275. Another major change made to the route was the crossing of the Everglades. Due to environmental concerns of upgrading the Tamiami Trail and the fact that the Dolphin Expressway was not built to interstate standards, the decision was made in 1973 to shift I-75's proposed route to cross the Everglades along Alligator Alley. By using this route, I-75 would run to the proposed Port Everglades Expressway, where it would turn south to Miami through the western suburbs of Weston and Pembroke Pines. It was still planned to continue east to I-95, but due to local opposition, I-75 was not built past its current terminus at the Palmetto Expressway in Hialeah. I-75 would be completed between Tampa and Naples by 1986, and portions in the western suburbs of Broward County were also opened at this time. Alligator Alley . The Alligator Alley segment previously existed as a two-lane tollway connecting the two coasts of Florida. Initially known as Everglades Parkway, it opened for traffic on February 11, 1968 after 4 years of construction. Built by H.L. Mills Construction Company, it had been called the most controversial roadway ever built in Florida during its initial construction. The name Alligator Alley was given by the American Automobile Association while it was planned since they believed it would be useless to cars, merely an alley for alligators. However, as alligators often frequent the waterways beside the road, and occasionally the road itself, the nickname has developed a somewhat literal meaning. The state would officially adopt the Alligator Alley name in 1966. As a two-lane road, Alligator Alley suffered from poor construction and environmental planning. It was also notorious for high-speed accidents with both head-on collisions and collisions with wildlife. The need to improve it was one of the factors in the decision to reroute I-75 onto the alley, which was rebuilt as a 4-lane interstate highway between 1986 and 1992. Many bridges and culverts designed to let water and wildlife pass underneath and permit the natural water flow of the Everglades were built as part of the upgrade. This helped to reduce the environmental impact of the highway somewhat, especially upon the severely endangered Florida panther. The completion of the converted Alligator Alley was the final link of the I-75 extension. The segment was signed Interstate 75 on November 25, 1992. Fully completing the highway from Miami to Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. In January 2000, the West End Toll Plaza of Alligator Alley was dedicated to the memory of Edward J. Beck, a toll taker who was murdered while on the job on January 30, 1974. Recent history. On January 28, 2002, the Florida Department of Transportation began a transition of interchange numbers from sequential exits to mileage-based exits. A state effort to privatize Alligator Alley failed in May 2009 when no bids were received for the highway that met the required terms. In October 2009, the Florida Department of Transportation began a relocation project for the northbound ramp of exit 275, which includes a connecting ramp with I-275. This project was designed to prevent weaving in the vicinity of I-275 and ESA-56, a hazard that has occurred since the exit 275 and ESA-56 were built across I-75 in 2003. Completion was expected to take place in early 2012. Plans are underway to redesign the interchanges with the north end of Florida's Turnpike and ESA-44, connecting them with collective distributor roads, and eliminating left-hand access to Florida's Turnpike from the main southbound lane. This is a joint effort between the Florida's Turnpike Enterprise and Florida Department of Transportation and is planned to occur in 2016. Another interchange is planned for Overpass Road north of State Road 54, connecting to County Road 530. A number of widening projects are underway on I-75 to eventually bring it to at least 6 lanes from Naples to the Georgia state line. FDOT is implementing express lanes along 28 miles of the I-75 and ESA-826 corridors, from just south of the ESA-836, in Miami-Dade County, to I-595 in Broward County. This project will complete another section of the South Florida Managed Lanes network for all motorists and will improve mobility, relieve congestion, provide additional travel options and accommodate future growth in the area. The 75 express lanes project extends 15 miles along I-75 from Northwest 170th Street, in Miami-Dade County, to I-595, in Broward County. Work will be completed in 4 segments to minimize effects to the public. Construction began early 2014 and is scheduled to be completed by mid-2019. The total project is estimated to cost $481 million. Services along I-75 are 8 pairs of rest areas along the length of the freeway. In addition, there are separate facilities for each direction of I-75 in Hamilton and Suwannee counties, southbound and northbound, respectively, and a welcome center south of the state line. Exit 131 has a single facility accessible from both travel directions on I-75, as well as the intersecting highway. Exit 161 once had a rest stop, but it was closed in 2015. Each rest area has restrooms, vending machines, picnic tables, dog walk areas, and nighttime security. The Welcome Center also has travel information and free orange juice. Motorist aid call boxes were installed starting in 1973, eventually being installed on both outside shoulders of the road every mile to allow drivers to indicate the need for gasoline, repair, or emergency services. The boxes were removed in late 2013. Intelligent transportation systems, which include surveillance cameras and electronic message signs, have been installed along I-75 throughout Florida in recent years. ITS systems are currently operating from the South End in Miami to the Tampa Bay metro area. The Everglades radio network is a network of travelers information stations serving Alligator Alley in the Everglades region and based at Florida Gulf Coast University in Fort Myers. It consists of 2 low-power FM radio stations. Exit list. In literature, in John D. MacDonald's Travis McGee novel, The Long Lavender Look, the story takes place on and in towns accessible from Alligator Alley. See also, Interstate 75 Rock Throwing Death. References. External links. Interstate 75 Index, Florida at our roads. I-275 Florida has information tangential to its parent I-75 in the Tampa Bay area.